Okay, so now that we've checked out how digital music is created, it's time to get on to our next song. So right before we do that, we're just going to make sure that we have all the factory content. That means the content that's made by Presonus. Presonus are the people who made Studio One. They and some partners that they're affiliated with have created a whole bunch of loops and other things that are available in Studio One, but we need to make sure that that's all installed before we go about making a song with loops, because we're going to use loops throughout our experience in Studio One, so it's good to have as many as we can, and there's a lot that come with Studio One, so we're just going to check onto that first. So I have my 650 song open here. You can really be in anything for this. You can be in the song we created. You don't even have to be in the song. You could just be on the start page too. That would be fine. Just have Studio One open. It doesn't really matter. All you're going to do is go to your Studio One menu and go to Studio One Installation. So here we have the option to install a whole bunch of extra content that comes with Studio One. So what I'd recommend is going to where it says Configuration and setting this up to Full Installation. Now, probably you have a whole bunch of things checked here, unless you have already installed those things. As you can see, I've only got one check because the rest of it I have installed. Now, full installation is going to install everything, but there's a couple things we don't need, and actually it's just really one thing, and that's in the documentation folder. So if we just click the little arrow, it will open up, and you can see it's asking to install the manual, the Studio One reference manual in German, French, Spanish, Japanese. If you want those, of course, go ahead, but I definitely don't need them, so we can uncheck those. Keep the English one, but once that's all good, it will tell you at the bottom here how much space is required. Now, of course, for me, no space is required because I have everything installed already. Now, for you, it may be anywhere from a few hundred megabytes up to like 32 gigabytes if you haven't installed anything. And then next to that, we see space available. This is how much space you actually have on your hard drive. Now, if this is too small, like if you have only 20 gigabytes of space, but this needs 32 gigabytes of space, well, you're going to have to free up some space on your hard drive if you want to install everything, which I would recommend that you do. So there's a few ways you can go about freeing up space. The first is to make sure that you've emptied your trash or recycle bin if you haven't done that in a while, because you may have a bunch of stuff that's built up in there. You can also go and look into your applications and get rid of any applications, just delete or uninstall them that you don't use anymore or you just tried out for a while. And then also a great place to check out is your downloads folder. A lot of people don't clean up their downloads folder, but you can get like hundreds of gigabytes worth of downloads just sitting in there that you're not using. So that would be the next place to check out, because it's an important thing to do, not just for this, but in general for running your computer, is to keep as little on it as possible. Hard drives above, say, 75% full start to get slowed down. So if you can keep it down to 50% or lower, you'd really be doing yourself a favor and your computer will run much faster. So once you've figured that out and you've got your space available higher than the space required, you can press install and then just let it run. And depending on how much you have to install, it's going to take a long time. If you have 30 gigabytes, it has to download those 30 gigabytes, so make sure you're on a good Wi-Fi connection at home or wherever you are, and then just let it go for the hours that it takes, and then come back to this video once everything is installed. So we're going to assume that you have done the installation now, and you have nothing left to install, no space required, everything's done, and we can come back into our session, and we want to now get a hold of Lydian Loops V1. So this is a package of loops that I created for Lydian that's going to help us get started. And I just made it to make things easier, and we're going to see why once we start to get into it. So you can find that with a link underneath this video. What we're going to do is download that, and then I'm going to show you how to install that. So if I just go to my Finder, which is the same as the Windows Explorer, and I go to my Downloads folder, as you can see, I have downloaded Lydian Loops V1 here. When you download it, it may be in a zip file, so you'll have to double click that to unzip it, and then you'll have Lydian Loops V1.soundset. Then in a different window or a different tab, you need to navigate to your Studio One folder. So remember, that was in Documents and then Studio One, and then you'll be presented with the folders here. Now, you may have a little bit different layout than me. I've put a bunch of things into a content folder, but yours probably are not in that folder. Regardless of where it is, you're looking for a folder called Sound Sets. So you can double click on that. And this will be all the sound sets that you've downloaded in the installation process we just went through. And this is where you're going to put the Lydian Loops Volume 1. So I'm going to go back over to Downloads. I'm just going to drag Lydian Loops Volume 1 sound set into my sound sets folder. Now it's asking me, do I want to replace it? That's because I've already done this. It's already in my folder. So I'm not going to actually do the movement because I've already done it before. But for you, you just put it in there and it'll be good to go. Once that's in your sound sets folder, you should see it here, Lydian Loops Volume 1. Then for that to take effect, I recommend that you restart Studio One. So we come back into Studio One and we can quit that either by going to File or Studio One menu and quit Studio One and then just restart that. So now we're back and the Lydian Loops Volume 1 will be installed. And we're going to take a look at that in just a minute, where to find that, and then we're going to get started on making our next piece of music.